Welcome, welcome. This is Senator Mike Gianaris. Thank you for joining us on this virtual press conference with what we consider some of the best news we've had out of our state budget in many years. As you all know, the campaign for fiscal equity was a campaign that resulted in a successful decision from the Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York, that we have been unconstitutionally underfunding our schools. That decision was made over a decade ago, and we have been fighting ever since to get the required monies in the budget so that our schools could be made whole. We're talking about lots of money for the schools throughout this state, and lots of money for Western Queens, which is what I care about the most as well. Breaking down the money that was owed, it's over $33 million in additional aid just to Western Queens schools alone. I'm going to see if I can get this screen share thing working properly. Put up the list for Western Queens schools. I hope you can all see that. So you can see it's a lot of money. Some individual schools will be getting in excess of $2.5 million. Those tend to be the high schools, but even middle schools and elementary schools, some of them are in the seven figures, others are very close, but it's a lot of money that's going to be pumped into these classrooms. And we're very excited that this is finally happening after so many years. I think there's a couple of reasons why. One is the incredible hard work of some of the advocates who you're going to hear from momentarily. The other, to be frank, is a Democratic majority in the state Senate that is now able to work with our colleagues in the Assembly to advance so many of these causes. And with all the discussion from the defenders of the wealthy this past year about whether we should tax them or not, this is the result of those taxes on high income earners. Real money going to causes that we care about, they're going to help our kids. And so it's not just that we're doing it to be punitive, we're doing it because there are needs that have gone unmet for a very long time. And I think most people would agree that this is more than worth it when you're looking at the millions of dollars that are going to our school kids, particularly in Western Queens, but throughout the entire state. And so I want to bring on someone who heads a group that has been in this fight from the very beginning, the Alliance for Quality Education. Back in the days when Billy Easton was running it, was very active on this, and Jasmine Gripper, who has some roots in Western Queens herself, I believe, that she can talk about. But she's done an admirable job of pushing this, and she's the one who's there when it got done. So all credit to her and her group for fighting this fight. And I'd like her to say a few words as well, Jasmine.
Thank you, Senator Gianaris. Yes, I'm Jasmine Gripper, the Executive Director of the Alliance for Quality Education. I am a proud product of the New York City public school system from kindergarten to CUNY. I used to live in Queens, and I went to Hillcrest High School way back in the day. And so I'm excited about what these resources mean to students in Queens and across New York City. The Foundation Aid formula was a formula designed for equity because New York City parents sued the state and said we needed more resources for our schools. And about $1.1 billion is owed to New York City schools across the city. And this year's budget passed by the Senate Democratic majority, the Assembly Democratic majority, which that power dynamic shift in Albany is what made this victory possible, means that in this year's budget, New York City got $530 million in foundation aid. This is a huge historic investment. Since the formula was created, we have never had statewide $1.4 billion go into foundation aid. And this is a credit to the leadership in the Senate and the Assembly for holding strong on this issue, making education a top priority, and for having a bold vision around raising taxes on the ultra wealthy in order to invest strategically in our schools like education. We saw the vast inequity that existed in our schools when COVID-19 pandemic hit. We saw that the haves and have-nots within school districts and many children not having the resources that they needed to learn. This investment means our kids can get back on track. This investment means that when we return to the classroom, we can have smaller class sizes. There can be strategic investments in technology. We can hire the counselors and mental health professionals that we know our kids are going to need to help them recover from this pandemic and the emotional instability that it caused. And so literally, we know this is going to be a transformative systemic change to education when we have this infusion of money coming into our schools. So really excited about what this means. AQE hosted an accountability forum to talk about this with parents last night. We had over 140 parents join us, and they were ready to hit the ground running to talk to other parents in their districts about how do we make sure these resources are used the right way, to advocate with the city on making sure they get to our community. But one thing we really wanted to do was just celebrate this moment. This is a huge victory for New York students. So thank you, Senator Gianaris, for all your hard work and your longtime leadership on this issue.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. We appreciate it. As you can see from the list, there's a lot of schools just in Western Queens that's not even a comprehensive list that are benefiting from this. So we couldn't have all of them represented, but we did want someone to speak on behalf of parents. And one of our great schools is PSIS 78. So we have the president of the PTA there, Kelly Craig. Kelly?
Thank you so much, Senator Gianaris. I'm so excited to be able to join here as a parent of although I'm not a native New Yorker, I have given birth to a native New Yorker, and I'm proudly raising him in the New York City public school system. And, to have an advocate like you, Senator Gianaris, and your entire team to continuously not only fight for Western Queens, but to fight for our children is such an incredible thing. And I just want to thank you on behalf of all parents. Foundation aid is something that has been owed to our students. We're talking about children. It shouldn't be a discussion that they're going without adequate needs. And to be able to see this money coming directly to impact the lives of the children and to help shape out communities, something really, truly remarkable to see. And speaking for all parents, we're just very grateful for my son, for everyone's sons and daughter, and we thank you all very much for this.
Thank you, Kelly. And I neglected to mention, as Jasmine has, I'm a product of the New York City Public Schools as well. PS 84, IS 141 right here in Astoria, and Long Island City High School, which as I look at that list, I notice is the top recipient of money owed to them as a result of the CFE decision, $2.6 million just for my alma mater alone. And so we're proud we got this done. It was a long time coming. The fact that we owed $4.5 billion to our public school kids and weren't paying the fare for over a decade is an embarrassment to the state. I'm glad that our Senate majority was able to get it done, and I'm really appreciative again for all the advocacy done by AQE, our PTAs, the parents throughout New York, and so many others who pushed really hard until we finally got it done. So I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad we found the money for it. I'm glad that we're asking the wealthy who are doing well to help pave the way for our school kids. That's the way our government should work. Find people who have the ability and the resources to create the kind of communities that we want for our families. And so a good news announcement. We've got the details on the screen there of where the money's going in the neighborhood. And if there are any questions from the media, I'm happy to take them now.
If you raise your hand, we will unmute you. Your virtual hand, that is, will unmute you and you can ask a question.
Or if we answered all your questions, you're welcome.
I see some hands. All right, your first question, Senator, is from Angelica Acevedo.
Hi, good morning or afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask, how will these schools be receiving the funds? Is it all just one shot or throughout the year?
It's the full amount is over 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, and Jasmine could step in if I say anything incorrect. And the money will be given, as it relates to New York City, will be given to the administration and the City Department of Ed. The numbers we've come up with is, as we believe they will be allocated starting this coming September, based on the way that the city has filled out its formula in the past.
Thank you.
Next, we have Michelle Bocanegra from Politico.
Hi, Senator. How are you?
I'm good, Michelle.
Good. I had a couple questions for you. So, this is something that's obviously being very widely celebrated, given the fact that it's been, a long, hard fight in Albany to make this full phase in a reality. But some folks, ranging from superintendents to, education policy wonks, are a little more cautious in their celebration of the full phase in over multiple years, since they say that it would have to be appropriated into future budgets. So I guess my question is just, can you understand their concern, or I guess more cautious approach despite the full?
Well, of course I can understand it. They've been waiting for over a decade for this to happen at all, even though it was an obligation. But what I can say is that the dual supermajorities in both houses have made a commitment that we're not going to break. And to get back to the revenue question for a second, the reason we needed to raise taxes on the wealthy, even though federal money was flowing as part of the pandemic relief, is because the federal money is going to stop coming. And we needed a continuing stream of revenue so that we can fund obligations like this going forward into the future. So we are committed to doing it. I can understand if people want to see the money show up first, but a third of the money is already coming. That's already been appropriated. And we're committed to getting the rest of it over the following 2 years.
Great.
Can I add on to that? Because I think the way the Senate and the legislature doled out this money really signaled a strength of confidence to school districts that in a year where the feds were doing so much, the state was like, we're making a multi-year commitment on ongoing permanent funding to schools. And had the state not committed to fund foundation aid, I think districts should have been worried about hitting a fiscal cliff when the federal dollars ran out. But because the state has committed to fully fund foundation aid, districts can actually think about multi-year planning, and they have the resources in the outward years to come. And I think I am really confident in this Democratic majority in the Senate and the Assembly to maintain their promise to New York students.
It's going to happen.
If you wouldn't mind, if I could sneak in a follow-up question. So for school districts around the state that are getting, of course, major increases here simply by the fact that they were previously being underfunded by a significant margin, are there specific areas that you hope districts will prioritize with all this new cash?
Well, we hope the money, as much as possible, goes into the classroom to help the kids with the needs of particular school districts. Each school district has its own specific needs that it's trying to fulfill. But it is my hope, and I'll let Jasmine come in here as well, but it's my hope that the money ends up in the classroom and nowhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are some accountability mechanisms tied to foundation aid formula, like the contract for excellence, which says the money should go to reducing class sizes, hiring guidance counselors, having a nurse in every school. And so the money is earmarked, even though it's general operating aid, to be prioritized for high need students and for the things that we know proven to work strategies in education, like having more support staff.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Allie Griffin at the Queen's Post. Oh.
Hi,
Allie.
Senator. Thanks for taking my question. I appreciate it.
Sure.
I was wondering if you could just explain briefly how you determined the amount that each school received or is going to receive.
Yeah, I mean, Jasmine, you want to talk to that? Because we worked with AQ to develop those numbers. I believe it's what CFE formula determines each of those schools was owed, but Jasmine can put some details around that.
Yeah, this is a regional methodology of calculating foundation aid owed. 1.1 billion is owed to New York City schools. And based on the population of where students are in New York City, we calculate a reasonable amount for each district. So this is not exact, like these numbers can go up or down based on student need in each of these schools, but this is an approximation of what's owed if you look at the population, number of kids in each school based on what's owed to New York City as a whole.
Great, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, any other questions? Any other follow-ups? We allow follow-ups. Oh, one more from Michelle. Did I see your hand again?
No, I'm sorry. That was a mistake. Think so.
See, we're here to check. We want to make sure everyone gets their questions in. But if there are no more questions, thank you all for joining us today.